Welcome to the 58th episode of the GameFor Podcast. In this episode, still back in the office, we'll talk about how age can affect your tabletop gaming. I'm Adam.
I'm Matt.
And this is the GameFor Podcast. GameFor is a platform to help connect tabletop gamers and to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. Matt and I are part of a software development and design company called MilkCan. And because most of the folks at MilkCan love tabletop games, we've developed the GameFor app and launched it in early 2018. We launched this companion podcast in June 2019 to help tabletop gamers get more enjoyment out of their hobby. Due to the COVID-19 global pandemic, we hibernated the GameFor app in July of 2020 and plan to bring back a retooled version of the app for Android, iOS, and the web when gaming in person is safer. Until then, we'll keep bringing you this podcast to help you get more of your tabletop gaming.
Absolutely.
So last time, we recorded a touch early.
Yes, we did.
Because you were going to that conference.
Right. Not this conference, but that conference.
That conference. That's what it's called, that conference. And so how'd that go? How'd everything go?
It went really well.
It's a tech conference.
Yeah,
basically.
it's a tech conference. Apparently, they're going to have two now.
Oh.
So the second one is going to be in like January timeframe in Austin, Texas. So there's going to be...
Oh, so one is in... where is it? It's in...
the Dells.
Yeah, Wisconsin Dells in Wisconsin, which is a very beautiful part of the state.
Yeah.
And then Austin, Texas. That's cool. That's very cool.
And the cold months up here, so it'll be nice to kind of do the warm if I go down there for that.
It's interesting because I've got friends from Austin who have come up to that conference that I
that's interesting.
Yeah, that I sat and chatted with, and I hadn't seen them in quite some time, and now they can just stay at home.
Yeah, or go to both.
Sure.
But yeah, this year was kind of a weird year, as you can imagine.
In general, things
so
are
they
weird.
ran it as a hybrid conference this year, which means that there were some online. You could attend online, or you could attend it in person. So attendance was lower in person than normal, but actually still, I thought not too bad.
Yeah.
And as part of MilkCan's involvement and GameFor's involvement, we ran game night again this year, which was where there's a open night for gaming. It's usually the second night of the conference after the first full day. And
a lot of programmers and developers and such are tabletop gamers.
Yeah, like the Venn diagram circles really cross over there.
Yeah, that does. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, one of our local game stores, Boardlandia, donates the games every year from their library. So I haul all those with me, and then we check them in and out for the night so that people don't have to bring their own games. Some people still do.
Yeah.
And basically from like, they kind of have happy hours starting around 5:30 or 5:30. And then I think officially the game night starts at 6:30. But yeah, people start gaming basically from then until whenever. So
Question mark.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I think this year people were pretty much wrapped up around like 12 or 1 o'clock. So it was an earlier night. But yeah, lots of gaming. As part of the as part of that conference, I was doing a talk on building mobile apps and web apps and stuff like that, like we do with MilkCan.
Yeah.
And had done a demo app on a game an app that lets you to scan board games in and out of your personal library to loan out and keep track of and stuff like that.
Yeah, like if you've got a whole bunch of board games and you loan them to folks, kind of like with books too, you loan them to folks and then you forget who you loaned them to.
Right, or when you're like, when did I loan that? Oh, I loaned it to them a year ago. I should probably ask them if they still have it.
Exactly, yeah.
But I actually used it for game night as well, and checked in and out games all night with that. Actually was tweaking stuff on the fly with that, and it worked really well. People kind of were impressed by it and enjoyed it. Some of the people that come to my talk that morning were interested to see it, in live mode, and actually worked so well that we're tweaking it a little bit more, adding a couple of features, but we're going to add it to our GameFor app library. It's going to be on the app stores.
Yeah, so it won't be built into the GameFor app. It will be a separate GameFor app that's just for your game library.
Yep.
So if you have a very massively large game library, you'd like to loan them out to folks, you'd be able to use this to kind of keep track of that stuff. Or if you've got a game night that you do, at some sort of event, or it's also going to be very good for people who are using it for for conventions. Like if you've got a small local convention and you do have a game library, which a lot of conventions do that kind of thing, this will be a nice thing to be able to have in there. So
and it'll be free to download. We might introduce premium features at some point.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about that, but that would be a little bit down the road, I think.
Yeah, and that would be... we wouldn't remove any feature that's already in there. So
no. We talked about, like, because we're looking at probably putting ads into it at some point, and so when we do, the premium version probably wouldn't have ads, most likely. These are things we've been spitballing, to be perfectly honest with you. This is how the sausage
and
gets
like everything right now is stored locally on the phone, so, we might add, like, the Pro version, which kind of removes ads, and then stores everything in the cloud, and then that way you can use multiple devices to check in and out games.
So if your phone falls in the volcano, then you won't lose all your stuff.
And it checks in and out using actually the barcode scanner and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, the camera. So that's nice too.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's we're gonna be working on that in progress. I mean, the programming is basically kind of done.
Yeah, so we're just kind of tidying up a few things. So I would say probably by the time we have the next podcast, we'll probably have it out.
Yeah, potentially. I know I got to do some prettying up and stuff like that, a little bit here and there, make a fun splash screen, all that jazz. But yeah, that's looking forward to it.
So that was a fun little side project that I'm excited to see how people enjoy that.
Yeah, and it was hobby related to some degree.
Yeah,
so that's very cool too.
And then for personal hobbying, Pathfinder 2nd Edition, our campaign, we all made it to level 2. Nobody died off.
You're not GMing that?
I am not GMing it, which is actually really nice. Our last session this past Sunday, we ended up running into I called them the fungi drug cartel, because it was a bunch of like animated mushrooms that we found out were kind of running some illegal ordinances and stuff. And
you can't trust mushrooms. I've been saying that for years.
So they're kind of shady. But yeah, it was fun. The city guard at one point broke in and to kind of arrest them, and with some quick thinking, I was able to make it seem like we were the inside people helping the city guard the whole time.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, and I made my deception roll.
I'm not a criminal. I'm undercover.
Yes.
Indeed.
Our GM did not think that was going to fly. It made me roll for deception, and I rolled a 23.
Nice. Nice.
So, not only did we do that, but there's apparently a reward waiting for us back in the city.
Oh.
So it took it from us getting arrested to actually getting paid.
Is it a cake?
I don't know.
Oh. Well, we'll find out.
Millions in gold, I think.
Ooh. Yeah. Cash and prizes. Nice.
Then 3D printing, still doing that. Did my first transparent resin print for Adam's game, Reign in Hell. Doing some
cool demon cabal stuff, but you're doing it in like a red transparent resin.
Yeah, to try to give it a different look. So that came out really well. That was on the Saturn that had been down. I had to replace the LCD, so I got that in from China, from Elgu, and got it set up, and that printed perfectly the first time. And right at that time, the other one has now lost the LCD. So
because you have two Saturns.
I have two Saturns,
and so that's a good thing because you have one currently down and one currently working. So
I already contacted the support on the other one, and they're sending me a replacement part. So
it seems as if Elgu support is pretty on the ball.
They are absolutely phenomenal.
Okay, that's really nice to know.
Even though, like my wife was like, "Well, that seems like a bad design." I'm like, "Yep," but they're owning it and like, "Yep, we'll send you a free thing that shouldn't happen," and they're tweaking it and stuff. But they're keeping support, and like I know people that are like, "Yeah, I did something really stupid and I broke it," and they're like, "Okay, we'll still send you a free one." So,
no, that's very
and
cool.
the fact that like they cost like basically half of the next closest competitor. Like I think Anycubic is probably the next closest.
Well, the Saturn retailed for about $500, right? Yeah.
And I want to say the Photon X is the equivalent for
equivalent size.
Yeah, and that's I think $800.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah.
So yeah,
no, that's interesting. Yeah, no, but I've heard really great things, mainly from you, but from other people as well. So I'm really looking forward to eventually being able to set mine up and go through all that. But yeah, that is definitely good to hear. And I did think those red kind of transparent resin prints were cool looking. I like there's some washes on them and maybe a little bit of dry brush or something here and there. I can see that.
I'm gonna have fun kind of playing around with those.
Yeah.
And I bought a large bottle, so I'll be able to do it for other people as well. So.
Nice.
But yeah, that was pretty much it for hobbying. I didn't really get any painting done because my basement is still being put back together, but it's at least being put back together now versus I think the last time we talked, it was being taken apart. And
you had they were doing some sump pump work and all that stuff.
Yeah,
so you had to cut jackhammering, and you had to cut all the studs and the drywall up. How far?
4 feet up the wall.
Good Lord.
There was a couple spots where it was higher, so that went all the way to the ceiling, and all the electrical cables, everything.
So that's a bunch of work.
All the insulation. So insulation's back. So the stuff we've got to finish a little bit of the drywall rough, and then we've got someone coming in to do the mudding or whatever they call that
coating stuff. They put on the top.
And then paint, trim, and then the flooring goes back.
I hope they don't actually just use real mud like from outside. I don't think that'll go well.
Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think it'll take paint very well either.
No.
Nice.
But yeah, that's pretty much me.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, let's see here. I received a review copy, an early review copy of the, what do you call it? Blanking. Kill Team. Octarius. Not Octavius. I want to say Octavius all the time. I don't know why. But no, it's Octarius. So it's the new version of Kill Team from Games Workshop, which is their small-scale skirmish game that takes place within the Warhammer 40,000 universe. They are releasing a new box set, and so they sent out some review copies, and we couldn't talk about it until a certain date, which was actually technically yesterday, now that I kind of think of it, because we're doing this on Tuesday, so Monday. So that's been, it was... I thought, well, since I've got to... Because sometimes they send stuff, it's literally like on Thursday, and they're like, hey, you can talk about it on Saturday, and you're like, all right, well, I guess I'll just open the box and show it to people. That's all I got time for. But because we had it for a couple extra, basically, it was almost 2 weeks, I think I had it, before the embargo, is what they call it. I built a kill team of the veteran guardsmen, and I'm making air quotes there. They're basically they're new models of the Death Corps of Krieg, but I've been noticing the Games Workshop has not really been calling them that too much. They've been predominantly calling them veteran guardsmen, which is fine, whatever.
Okay.
Maybe they don't want the word death in there. I'm not sure. I don't know. Or Krieg.
Krieg, yeah.
Which is the same thing, I think, in German, but whatever. So, I built a kill team of 10 of them, and then I painted them and all that stuff and got them ready so that I could shoot pictures and such for the video that went up on Monday morning. So that took a decent amount of time. I was trying to speed paint them. That was the plan, was just I'm going to whip through and speed paint them. But they have a lot of detail. There's a lot of little fiddly bits. And so there's a lot of pieces of detail that I even just sort of kind of glossed over and was like, oh, well, the military, they paint everything the same color. It's great. But still, there's just a lot going on there. So they did take a little bit longer than I would have liked.
Yeah, complex.
Yeah, I think that's the case as well. I also worked on some of the terrain that comes in that box. I didn't do all of it. I basically kind of started working on the parts that just needed to be cut off the sprue and not built. So there were 4 bigger pieces that were like that, and then these 6 little barricades. And I got the 6 barricades done in time for my video, and the bigger pieces I didn't get done in time for the video, but I worked on them last night on Twitch, actually, and such. So... yeah, so, been doing that stuff, Kill Team related. I am also still working on a Redemptor Dreadnought, which is a big Dreadnought that came out after the Primaris models came out in 2000, or in 8th edition, I think, 40K. When they came out with the Primaris, that at some point they then came out with this bigger Dreadnought, which is called the Redemptor Dreadnought. I've always thought it was cool. So I wanted to build one and paint one, but not for 40K. I have this sort of weird side project sort of situation that I've been doing for a number of years now that I refer to as Robots Left Behind. And I have this, I don't know, maybe I'll write a story someday and then I'll illustrate it with photos of these models or something like that. But I have a bunch of different, bigger, not too big, not Imperial Knight kind of size, but some of these larger robots that I paint up to be really grungy and battle-worn and all beat up, they've been left behind. There was a big battle here, but everybody left, a decade ago, and this robot is still kind of wandering around, looking for enemies, and it's all dirty and grungy. It's kind of like Wall-E, but with a gun.
Like Wall-E versus like what was it, AI?
A little bit, maybe, yeah. So I've done. Let's see. I took a Adeptus Mechanicus Warglaive, which is kind of like a little mini Imperial Knight, and I painted that up all grungy and stuff like that. That was, I think, the first one I might have done, and then I've also done that Necron Canoptic Reanimator, which came in the Indominus box, and I painted that up to kind of look like it's been stalking around the battlefield for a very long time, and now I'm working on this Redemptor, and I'm going to do a couple other pieces like that, and so it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to going down that road. So, I've been working on it on Twitch, but I just kind of took a break this past week because I was working on this Orc Terrain for Kill Team, and so that was fun. But yeah, that's that, and then just a little bit more terrain work, but not as much as I would have liked. It's just kind of the way it works. You only got so much time in the day. So yeah, that's what I've been doing in my hobby stuff.
Nice.
So, and then, we're working on, I think probably by the time I get home, there might be a completely proofread version of the expansion, expansion that we're adding onto Reign in Hell.
Nice.
Which is going to be the solo/co-op expansion with 6 scenarios, which you will do in order. They will be you don't just pick whichever one you want. You actually go
more of a campaign.
One. Yeah, it's like a story basically, which is cool. But yeah, so hopefully we'll be able to have that ready to go very soon. With the text all proofread and stuff like that, then I can get into layout maybe even as early as this weekend or maybe even as early as tomorrow. Mm-hmm. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Very cool.
Yeah. So the topic of today's, this is not particularly a video. I was going to say the topic of today's video, but we're just sitting here talking.
Yeah.
Predominantly in the dark is what we're doing, because if we turn on the overhead lights, then we get a buzz in the microphone, which is weird. And stupid magnetic fields. Anyway, so yeah, the topic is about what happens with your tabletop gaming enjoyment, opportunities, etc., as you age.
Right.
We're all doing it. We're all aging.
Right.
Try and stop it, but you can't. So
get off my table.
Get off my lawn? Sure. But yeah, so, we were kind of talking before the show about like what, initially the idea was like, well, what happens when you get old?
Yeah,
but we kind of looked at it from another angle, because you can also have issues when you're too young too.
Right.
So we thought that might be a little bit more.
And then as we did that, we're like, well, middle age isn't exactly the perfect gaming all the time either. So.
Yeah. No, that's true. There is definitely some pros and cons in all of the different age groups or whatever. Right. So yeah, we thought we'd kind of go over some of that stuff and maybe get some feedback and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, our feedback's been amazing lately. So thank you to everyone there. Every week I'm like, ooh, we got even more feedback than the week before. And then
the hot takes seem to be in the comments on YouTube. So if you are listening to this on non-YouTube and you do want to get part of the conversation, you could just go and comment in the YouTube area if you wanted to. You could subscribe and like over there if you're into that kind of thing.
That would be awesome.
We've got 500. We've got more than 500 subscribers.
550
on YouTube. That's something. Honestly, just as a side note, the podcast has been doing nice. We've been watching the analytics on the listening bits, like actually, through the different podcast people. We've been seeing our numbers continually going up over the last a little over 2 years now.
Yeah, especially the last 4 or 5 months has gone up, which is nice because it seems like the summertime it kind of quiets. But
yeah, you would think that sometimes, but I think that I don't know. Maybe people are listening to us while they're out mowing the lawn.
Yeah, that's when I listen to my podcast.
Yeah, I can't do that. I don't like to listen to things while I'm mowing the lawn, just in case, I don't know, maybe there's going to be a little baby rabbit that I don't want to run over or something like that. And well, it might be like, hey, if I got the headphones on, I can't hear it.
That's true, yeah.
Well, that's what rabbits do all the time.
Yeah.
That might not be a rabbit that I'm thinking of. Anyway, so when you're young...
Yeah, everything's perfect. No,
but there's some good young, things.
Right? Yeah, I remember being young.
I don't remember it so well, but yeah. But I do remember gaming when I was young.
Yes, gaming. I remember fondly gaming when I was younger. It seemed like parents were usually pretty cool about gaming. I don't remember too many times that my parents were like, "No, we don't want you to socialize and play games with your friends." They were like,
Yeah,
oh,
no,
I'm glad you guys are using your imagination.
Right.
And
you should sit in front of the TV and don't move.
Right.
That's not normally what parents are doing.
No, they were just like, hey, yeah, we'll drive you over to go play with your friend's house and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. But what kind of stuff did you play? Like, I got into my first, like, nerd game. And when I say that, I mean not, like, Life or Monopoly or whatever, but, like, actually something that was, like, by a more specific company, like, in this case, Dungeons & Dragons. That was fifth grade for me.
Yep. Yeah, that was about the right time for me. Was Dungeons & Dragons, and then it was Magic the Gathering. Got hooked in.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and that became, I was as close to, I think, of a crack addiction as I could think of.
Yeah.
I remember like it interfering with school, and like we did, like at the time we were doing Odyssey of the Mind. I forget what it's called nowadays, but I remember our instructor or teacher being like, "Hey, I know you guys want to like play your Magic cards, but we've got club stuff to do." Like,
right? Yeah.
Like, man, but
yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think I see a lot of kids doing. Well, I don't see it because I don't go to school anymore, but I hear a lot about kids doing that with the Pokemans.
Yeah.
So yeah, that card game has also gotten incredibly popular and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I found when I was young, like we could get together and play, Dungeons and Dragons. I had a friend who was a little bit older than me, and I don't know, 3-4 years maybe, and he, I think 3 years older. And he would run, like he kind of taught me Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that, and we would start to play. And his family and my family, we would go to, we would rent these cottages because our parents were friends. And so we would rent these cottages. There was this group of 3 cottages, and like our family would rent one, and then his family would rent one. And so we would be like right next to each other, like almost like neighbors for like a week on a vacation thing. And everyone would go out and go swimming and all that stuff. And we'd sit there in the kitchen and, with graph paper and be killing orcs and stuff like that. And so, yeah, that was kind of my first exposure to it. But you had, you got tons and tons and tons of time, don't you? You know what I mean? As a kid.
I remember doing the graph paper. I remember like just building dungeons just to build dungeons. And,
oh, yeah. We would be working on like our keeps. Like we're like, okay, well, I'm going to have eventually when I get this many gold pieces, then I'll be able to buy a keep. And you would like follow the instructions in the book, be like, okay, well, you can have this size and this for this cost. And then you're like, well, then you come down this hallway. And if you don't turn here, well, then the arrow shoots you, and just stuff like that. I mean, it was a ton of fun just to sit there and do that stuff as well with somebody else or even by yourself. But it was definitely less constraints, and it was definitely. You had time to do that stuff, certainly.
Approval.
And approval. Your parents were generally like, sure, they'd be like, we're here, you should go swimming, that kind of stuff.
Right, but come evening time, they're like, oh yeah, let's.
Like as long as you're being quiet, I guess for the most part, that's fine by us.
Right.
But it's not necessarily all. I was going to say Guns N' Roses. I don't know why I was going to say it was all Guns N' Roses. I was going to say maybe
they do have a new song out. So
I heard that, but I haven't heard the actual song.
Yeah.
I think Wine and Roses is what I was going to say, but kids shouldn't be drinking wine. Anyway, it's not
or
all,
eating roses.
Or eating roses. Don't do that. No, it's all. It's not all great being a kid, obviously.
Yeah, I remember like the older friends, like my friends, like older brothers, friends, and this stuff. They would like have like the new like at the time I think it was the 2.5. They'd have like the ones that were like the faux leather like Ranger handbook. And stuff like
I remember those. Yeah,
they had all the cool stuff, and like I was happy that I like begged and pleaded and saved up money to buy the player's handbook.
Right, exactly.
Buying anything like buying a new set of dice was like a big commitment. I was like, okay, well that's like 2 or 3 lawns mowed. And,
right, yeah.
Like I have to save that, and then I have I had to go to the store.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't just order it and stuff.
No, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
And then there was always the hey, you guys need to go to bed, so. For quite a while, it was like, oh, you can only game till 8, 9 o'clock at night, maybe 10 or 11 or midnight at a friend's house. But
yeah, I mean, as you got older into your teens and things like that,
it got later,
sleepovers and stuff. It became something you could do later, certainly. But as a real young kid, like when I started, like I said, 5th grade, that wasn't going to fly so much. But yeah, I mean, definitely your financial resources, the distances, being able to travel and get around and go see people who are farther away or whatever without having to get a ride from your parents or something like that. That's all difficult, bedtime certainly. But then there was also, there are plenty of games that as a kid you probably shouldn't be playing, or at least your parents is for sure are like, yeah, no, you can't play this. This has got a dead person on the front cover or whatever,
like
that kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember. Well, in the '80s, a lot of it, especially your fantasy stuff, like
Satanic Panic thing, that was for sure.
Yeah, Satanic Panic, but also like then like the. None of the women all had like bikini armor, and
right? Yeah,
and
no,
like
all the
very well endowed, and you're like,
and like you're
like, Mom, I'm not reading it for that, but
the representation of women in the early days of specifically RPGs and things like that, not so great. I mean, board games and things like that. I don't know. Did you play many nerd style board games back then? I don't know if there was that.
Not till I got to like high school, and even then I was like, it was probably like Axis and Allies and Scotland Yard, maybe.
Yeah, there weren't a lot when I was a younger kid. Basically, board games meant Monopoly and Sorry and Life and stuff.
Trivial
like that.
Pursuit was considered like an adult game.
Yep. But there was like a youth version. I'm pretty sure as well.
Yep.
But there wasn't a lot of like games like
Euro games.
Carcassonne or Settlers or stuff like that. There wasn't a lot of that stuff out there yet when I was a kid. Now I'm older than you by about 10 years.
Yeah.
But still, there wasn't a lot of cool board games. And I'm sure like over in Europe there were, but they hadn't reached here yet.
Right. And even if they had, they weren't popular. Like I remember like my friend had Balderdash, and that was considered like, whoa, weird. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not categories. Like, where did this crazy game come from?
Yeah, and when I was a kid, also like miniatures. I mean, sure, there were companies out there making miniatures, to use in D&D, and even I guess technically, I mean, Games Workshop. When I was getting into high school is when Games Workshop was really starting to pick up because they had fantasy for a while, but then I think 40K came out sometime in the late-ish 80s.
Okay.
So, but again, this was the very early proto kind of like.
So they're probably all like lead and.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of metal and all that kind of stuff, which is fine. But it wasn't necessarily something that as many people did back then as they do now. So I don't know. I do see kids playing miniature games and things like that at conventions and at the store sometime and things like that. And I definitely see younger kids and I see younger people playing board games like, again, nerd style board games, as I like to call them, although I don't know what else I could call them instead. Somebody can comment about a better name for those types of games to differentiate from your mass market kind of games.
Ameritrash I've heard, but
well, sure, but I mean,
I don't like that.
No, I mean, I guess that the trick is that I'm talking about anything that's not just a normal. I don't know. Is
commercialized?
Is Monopoly considered Ameritrash?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought that had some other sort of connotation to it. I thought that just meant. I thought it was any kind of American game that had dice in it in general, which could then get into a bunch of different games and not just Monopoly.
Yeah, I think it was anything that was like kind of like the mass-produced games and stuff. But I mean, there were some good. I mean, you look at like Dark Tower. I mean, that was an American game.
Dark Tower was very cool.
So. Yeah, I don't.
When's that Dark Tower Kickstarter supposed to show up on your doorstep?
Did
you read? You got it, didn't you?
Yeah. The last update, I believe, is that they are now producing it.
Okay.
But then it's probably going to take like 3 years by boat.
Yeah, everything is getting stuff made overseas and then sending it back over to America is unfortunately coming home to roost as a problem right now, and that is. Yeah, I was just actually earlier today. I got a Kickstarter message from the one Kickstarter I've done in the last couple of. Well, that's not true. The two Kickstarters from one of the two Kickstarters I've done in the last couple of years. I've stayed away from Kickstarter a good deal lately, but yeah, I had the new version of Car Wars from Steve Jackson Games is evidently the containers are on boats and the boats are leaving the country, aka China, and who knows. So that's at least a benefit, or it's a bonus. We're heading in the right direction, but we'll see.
Yeah, then that's kind of what I think. The only nice thing if you're running a Kickstarter or had run a Kickstarter is that you're not the only one in it.
Right, exactly.
Like when I first saw the first messages, they were very apologetic and like, we swear we're not the only ones. And now it's like, just like everyone else.
Yeah, it's pretty across the board. If you're getting your stuff made overseas, it's going to take some time to get here, and it's going to be a lot more expensive than they originally thought too. So I think you're going to see a lot of Kickstarters are going to not make money. Yeah,
I'm hoping not. Yeah, some of the newer companies don't go under because of it.
Yeah. No, I agree. But anyway, talking about being young, I don't know. It's I think people in general do have a bit of a rose-colored glasses sort of situation to things that they did when they were younger. I mean, look at, I wanted to say Perfect Strangers because it's the same font, but it's not.
Family Matters?
No. On Netflix with the kids and the Demogorgon.
Stranger
Things. Perfect Strangers and Stranger Things have almost exactly the same font. I'm a font nerd, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they've taken a version of it and made it look like basically every other Stephen King book. That was kind of the whole point from that time. But anyway, yes, Stranger Things, like that was a big, huge hook, especially in the first season, was them playing D&D and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And being down in the basement and having a great time and hooting and hollering. And so there is that kind of rose-colored glasses thing to it. And I think that you get it even more now because you do have different types of games that they didn't have back then, like, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, that kind of stuff, board games. And, even, again, the young kids are not as much into miniatures, and we'll talk a little bit about the reasonings behind that as well.
Yeah.
But so then, you're young. Young is a broad, period of time, and eventually then you probably graduate from high school and or college or whatever and start a family or whatever, and you become middle-aged.
Yeah, where you start going, 10 years ago. Wait, that wasn't 10 years ago. That was 20 years ago.
Right, exactly. And what is that? That's a very strange thing where you're just like, oh, no, in like the 90s. That was like 10 years ago. You're like, no, that was 30 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because of the whole millennium transition that it makes it feel like that, or if everybody's done this.
I heard just recently from somebody, and I've always thought, I knew there was something to it, but like the concept of when you're a little kid, if you've been living for 6 years and you have to wait a year for something, that's a sixth of your entire life. If you're 50 and you have to wait 6 years, or you have to wait a year for something, that's a 50th of your life. So it's a proportion to how long you've been around, sort of kind of time dilation, sort of conception, whatever. Anyway,
well, and the Earth is slowly slowing down too, so it takes
flat.
Your days are longer by like 6 milliseconds every day.
We're slowing down.
Yeah, because it's gaining more mass.
Is it?
Yeah, from like asteroids and stuff like that.
I thought it was just because I've been eating too much.
It's like 6 milliseconds a year or something like.
Well, it's going to add up,
right?
Yeah. Anyway, but yes. So when you're middle aged, you have some benefits.
Yeah,
you generally, like that thing before you were talking about being able to go to the shop and buy some dice, that's not nearly as difficult as it used to be.
No, now you can usually you can spend those things pretty easily. Like you're like, oh yeah, I went and bought some new dice today. Like, oh, why? Yeah, I just felt like it.
I mean, man, there's a lot of dice out there these days. There's a lot of companies spending a lot of money. There's like people buying expensive honking dice, and I'm astounded.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of dice, don't get me wrong, but I don't have any dice that I ever paid like a buttload of money for. Like I
still have yet to pull the trigger on like $80 dice, but
no. But I literally, like, if I ever have bought a set of dice that was over $15, I would be surprised. You know what I mean? I don't think so. Well, that's not true.
15 is kind of low. I would say 25 is probably the high.
Well, I mean, if you're just talking about a regular set of dice, like a regular set of just like the normal polyhedrons that you use for, No, I'm talking about like a 4, a 6, and an 8. Like those tubes, an expensive one of those tubes can be, well, not expensive, but a sort of expensive one of those tubes is like $15 sometimes.
20.
Really?
22,
my friend Kevin's, I think, underselling. But
Kevin has good prices.
He does.
But if you go to a con, you're probably going to pay $25.
Sure.
So.
And like I said, I do have some dice that I bought from Games Workshop that are all 6-siders, and they used to be like generally $20 for a set, but they were fancy. Like the ones that I bought are Nurgle dice. So Nurgle is the god of like decay and disease and whatever. And those dice are the craziest things. Like they're like hollow, and then there's like a rubber thing that goes inside the die so that the die looks like it has like pustules and stuff, and you have the number of pustules, and that's how you know which number of sides it is.
Cool.
They're super cool, and also because they're hollow, they're incredibly quiet when you roll them, which I also dig a lot too. But they are sometimes a little hard to read. I'm not going to lie, and they are also a little gross looking. But they were like $20 nowadays. I think GW's selling their dice sets for closer to $25. So. Nonetheless, my point is that if you want to spend $100 on dice, you can totally do that. Make them out of.
I remember like the first time, like I had like my first full-time job. I was out of college and stuff, and was at had a game store, but it was like a video. It was like a video game store too.
Sure.
I don't think it was GameStop, but It was in the mall, and I remember thinking like, "Oh, the new PlayStation." I don't have a PlayStation 2, and I always played my friend's PlayStation 2 in college, and I'm like, I could just buy it right now, and I went and bought it, and I was like, "Oh, well."
Yeah, there is something about that. Once you get to a certain age, all of a sudden you're like, I have more money because I have to work all the time,
right?
But there it is. And also, as an adult, as middle-aged, you also get to, not only do you have more money usually than you did when you were a kid, especially a small kid, but you also have, it's not that you have more time, but you get to control your time to some degree.
To some point, yeah. Like, you can be like, if you want to stay up all night and game with your friends.
Your mom is not going to say no.
Right.
Because you were 35.
Now, tomorrow because you have to work or you had some other commitment, might absolutely hate you the next day.
Right, yeah.
But the all-night you is just having fun.
Yeah. Evening you is having a good time, but morning you is not going to be a happy person.
If you guys want to order pizzas at 2 a.m. Because the pizza place is still open,
sure,
you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't have to ask permission.
No, exactly. So, yeah, you like all-night type gaming stuff. Plus, also just like, you can be in a situation a lot of times where you're just like, we're going to get together and play all day Saturday. You know what I mean? Whereas before, it used to be like, maybe your parents were like, well, we need you to mow the lawn, we need you to do this.
You have to go to your aunt's house.
Yeah. And so now you don't have to do that as much. And also, in many situations, not all of them, but specifically, I think for board games, you become very frequently the target demographic.
Yeah, that's like all of a sudden, like, if you want to know why the 80s and 90s are suddenly themed a lot, is because that's our childhood.
Right, those people are right now in the prime buying demographic, and so that's why. I mean, like, look at things like what was that game you bought? Fireball Island.
Yeah.
And we were talking before about Dark Tower.
Yep.
Exactly, yeah.
Car Wars. All that stuff. They're like...
I mean, Car Wars wasn't as much of a, I would say, cultural touchstone as the other two games were.
But still, it's
amongst certain flavors of nerd gamers, the fact that they brought it back is a very specific thing. Right. Now, that being said, they did change it. It's not... Like, Car Wars is not like the same game, and I think that that's basically a good thing. So the new Car Wars honestly reminds me a lot more of Star Wars X-Wing. Now, the ships aren't, the cars are not like pre-painted like the X-Wing ones are, but there's a lot of the mechanics of the game that remind me of that.
Yeah, the templates and stuff.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, so you've got some money in your pocket because you're working, and
they're building stuff they're
making stuff for you, and you've got the time, hopefully, at least you've got the control of your own schedule to be able to do that kind of stuff. You want to stay up late, knock yourself out, stay up late.
It's the best time to go gaming, except that, holy cow, do you have responsibilities now?
It's true. To get that money, you generally have responsibilities. Like, and if you've got a family as well, that's even more responsibility.
Like I talked about earlier, my house is falling down, so I got to fix that.
It's not falling down. It's just damp on the bottom.
It's just the foundation. Don't worry about it. That's good.
Who needs that?
You got to mow the lawn. Your car needs maintenance, or you got your job that's got to pay for all this stuff.
Right.
Maybe
and that takes up a certain amount of time.
3 jobs.
Day.
Yeah. Maybe kids, wife. You've got, if you married, you've got their family responsibilities. So now instead of 10 birthdays a year, now you have 30 birthdays a year.
That's a lot of birthdays. It's a situation of you have more control over your schedule of free time. But you have less free time. That's the issue. Yeah. So you get to say, when I have this 2 hours of free time, I'm going to do what I want with it. But yeah, the rest of the time you're doing a lot of things that you need to do, responsibilities.
I've tried to communicate that to my kids, just like my oldest was kind of into like making video games. I'm like, now's the time to do it. Like, if you want to make your own video game, you literally have, like, especially during the summer, you have like 12 hours of unscheduled time you could devote to that every single day.
It's true.
Like, I'd be lucky if I had 2 hours in a week to do that.
Oh yeah, no. I sat and had lunch one time at a conference that I was at, a tech conference, more for design. But anyway, I talked to these two guys, like, at lunchtime. You just sit down at a table and you're eating your food. And at this conference, I'm talking to these two guys who were building a game app, some sort of game app and whatnot. And the only reason they were able to do it was because they had a 2-hour each way commute to work on the bus, or something like that, and the bus had Wi-Fi. So the only reason that they were being able to make this app thing a go and be able to even start like a side hustle kind of company was because they had 4 hours a day during the weekday where they just couldn't do anything except sit on the bus or the train or whatever it was.
Right.
And it might have been an hour and a half each way, or instead of 2 hours, but it was a decent amount of time. I was, as a person coming from like, the
10,
Wisconsin,
15 minute, yeah.
I'm like I'm driving 25 minutes to work, and it used to be like I had a job at one point where it was a 30-second walk to work.
Right.
So it was like, it was not that big. But but there's nothing else. They can't be doing laundry. They can't be mowing the lawn. They're on a bus,
Right.
So they would sit down and spend that time. So you have to try to find time to carve out your free time, and whether it's for tabletop gaming of any kind of flavor. A lot of people, that's why I think mobile phone versions of tabletop games have become quite popular. Like there's a nice mobile, I know there's a really good mobile version of Ticket to Ride and a bunch of different games like that. And again, it's because sometimes people are just sitting on a bus, sitting on a subway, whatever, So, you've got only a certain amount of time, as we all do. But that is an issue as far as the middle-aged thing to some degree. But there's also, it's not just like time, but it's also in some situations, the stigma. If you're like, oh, I got together with, you're like 40.
Yep.
You specifically are 40.
Yes, I am.
Do you ever get people who are like, wait, you sat and played Dungeons and Dragons on Saturday night with your friends?
Not as much now.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it is more popular than it used to be, certainly.
Right. I would say, like, more actually, like, when I was 30, like, they're like, you went to your friend's house all day and played board games?
Yeah.
I didn't know people did that.
Right, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So now it's become a little bit more mainstream, but there was definitely a thing where it was like, well, why did you choose to do that? Isn't that a kid's thing? Like,
right.
Like, you're an adult now. Why are you doing that?
Well, what's my other option? Am I going to sit and watch sports and just
throw darts at the bar?
I guess. I don't know. I mean, go mow the lawn again? No, I don't want to do that. Like, when I want to have a good time, I'm generally trying to play a game or paint a model personally, or something along those lines. But that there is, even still in this day and age, when some of the biggest, most popular TV shows out on the on the broadcast networks are talking about people playing Dungeons and Dragons and not even making that much fun of it.
Right. It's even become kind of like I remember this summer we had a bunch of one of my sons had a baseball tournament. We had the whole team back at our house, and my bar is down in my gaming room.
Sure.
So some of the people came down to, refresh their beverages and were like looking at all my display cases and like, and at first I was like, oh,
right, yeah.
It's out that
the display cases of
not only am I
the
baseball, one of the baseball coaches, but I paint miniatures, and but they're all like, those are super cool. Like, how'd you do that? And like, oh, I love, like, I remember these, and I didn't know you could get these. And
oh yeah.
So yeah, it went from that to like, oh yeah, it's actually kind of more, accepted now.
Yeah, but there's still some of it, but it is getting better, and I'm glad for that. So that's definitely
the other fun thing that's not fun about middle age is that not only are you busy, but all your friends are busy, and you're sometimes busy at different times.
Right. Definitely.
So like you're like, whereas before it was like, hey, we're gonna have 12 of my friends in high school. If I said 12 of my friends were all gonna play board games, we could go play board games.
Generally, the schedules are going to align.
I don't think I could ever get 12 people in the same room without months and months of pre-planning to get everybody.
Like if it's like somebody's birthday and it's family, you can get a decent amount of people together. But if you're like, hey, let's get together this Saturday and I'll play board games, all 12 of us. If you were to post that on a Monday, you'd get 7 people that'd be like, yeah, I can't.
I'm busy. I'm doing this. And
exactly. Again, you're right. You'd have to plan out months and months in advance and make it a thing.
And even then, there's going to be someone's like, oh, my kid's sick, my dog's sick, my job's making me work that weekend. Yeah.
My kid got my dog sick. I mean, that happens. But yeah, so there's all these different things that as a middle-aged person, sure, you've got some benefits, and that's cool. But it is also difficult, and sometimes you have to figure out ways to maximize your schedule, maximize your free time, maximize, the amount of you can spend a bunch of money on things, and that's why I think you see also a lot of board gamers, especially like on Zoom calls and stuff like that, where they've got a wall of board games behind them. And but then you wonder, like, that's cool, but how many of those have you gotten to play recently? You know what I mean? Like there's I'm not calling anybody out, but I'm just saying.
There's a shame. There's some shame in there.
Well, I mean, again,
it doesn't have to be shame.
Exactly, but it is a situation where it is easier. At certain times in your life, it is way easier to buy than to play.
Oh yeah,
and that's definitely the case with miniatures as well. It's way easier to buy a box of miniatures, but then you got to go home and cut them off the little sprues, and you got to glue them together and sand them and all that stuff, and then prime them and then paint them and blah blah blah.
Right.
The buying part's easy, and you get a bit of an endorphin hit, and you're like, yeah, sweet, I bought this cool model, and then you're like, oh, now.
Yeah, like we were talking about the Kickstarter delays. Like I've got boxes and boxes of miniatures that are destined for my house at some point. And
they're out there somewhere in the world.
Part of me is kind of like, they can be delayed a little bit because I have no time to do anything with them.
No, absolutely. I've got, I did the Kickstarter level for Lee's game, Empire's Fall.
Yep.
We had Lee on the show back last year at some point. A couple of times, didn't we?
We've come a couple of times. Yep.
And he was also a sponsor of the show for a bit with Empire's Fall during the Kickstarter and things like that. Well, I did level of the Kickstarter where my stuff's going to show up painted.
Ooh, yeah, you were thinking ahead.
Well, it's a skirmish game, so it's not like you're going to get 100 painted models. You're going to get a smaller number of models, certainly. Yeah. So that's very cool. But I was thinking, I want to help out, definitely with our friend and everything like that. But I'm like, as I think about it now, I'm like, that's going to be kind of sweet actually when it just shows up.
Yeah, you're like, painted. I can play right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's sometimes difficult. So yeah, and then after you become middle-aged, you then become olderly, I guess.
Silver age.
Silverbacked. That's a different story altogether. I got 3 days before my 50th birthday, I got a letter from the AARP.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know, who aren't American or whatever, that kind of thing, the AARP stands for Aid Association to Retired People?
Something like that.
I don't know. American Association of Retired People.
Yeah.
The RP is the retired people part. Now, I'm not retired, obviously, and again, just turned 50. But they are on the ball with that. I think it used to be that you couldn't join until you were 60, and then they were 55, and I think now they're just like, hey, you want to join when you're 25? We don't care. Whatever. Knock yourself out. Send us money. That's great. So, anyway. So, yes, old. In theory, when you're old, you have more time.
Right.
Especially if you're retired.
You're like, I'm retiring, and I have all the free time in the world again.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, maybe.
Well, sure. I mean, again, you may do all kinds of weird volunteer things and have keep yourself busy that way, and that's fine. But you could also just be like, we're going to just game a whole bunch. I keep hearing people talking about how when our generation is in the home, it's going to be lit. Because it's just be LAN parties all the time. People just sitting there playing games.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, that too, but also just all the PC games and consoles. People playing against each other and all that kind of stuff. We'll see. We'll see how it goes, but it might happen. I mean, I already see you see people online. Well, not online, but you see people. I've seen YouTube videos about grandmas that play Skyrim, and then start a YouTube channel where they do it, and it's just grandma plays Skyrim, and then
because they're like, I played video games in the late 70s, early 80s, so that's me. So.
I remember being a little kid and playing Donkey Kong, I think.
Okay.
I think I was playing Donkey Kong on the Nintendo NES. I think there was Donkey Kong on the regular NES. Mm-hmm. And my grandmother was watching. She was over at Christmas time or whatever, and she's like, I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, well, I'm that little guy. And she's like, I don't know. What do you mean you're that guy? She was even at the base level, she's no idea what's going on. And it wasn't, and she was still mentally sharp, but it was so, I mean, she was born in when the Wright brothers were flying, not even. Yeah, no, yeah. She was born in the very early 1900s. My grandfather was born in 1899. And so, they just, this video game thing did not understand what was going on. And so, it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But all things considered, in theory, you have more time, especially if you get to retire. Who knows if we'll all get to do that or not. And then you also have a little bit less social anxiety.
Yeah, that's it started kind of as I became a parent, but as every year I get less and less anxious about what other people think of me.
You get to a certain age where, exactly. You see it with old people quite frequently. people in their 70s and 80s.
Right.
They're just like, they just don't give a crap about
Right.
what you think or whatever. And that's
Like if they want to wear their coat and slippers to Walmart,
sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who do they care?
Exactly. No, absolutely.
They're not impressing anyone.
So the stigma thing's not going to be there, certainly.
Yeah. So
you want to get together and play board games and whatever at the home and have a good time with that, or or at your house or whatever the deal is, and there's nothing going to be stopping you,
right?
And you're going to have a lot of time.
Yeah. So it's the perfect age for gaming, right?
Well, maybe not.
Now what?
Well, so as you get older, your faculties become a bit strained here and there.
Okay.
One that happens to pretty much everybody is eyesight. People who don't even wear glasses ever. You get to about 40, and all of a sudden, it becomes difficult to see things up close, no matter how healthy your eyes are.
Yeah.
I had my eye doctor tell me that once the lens of an eye has been around for about 40 years, it stops flexing as much as it normally can, and that's why you can't focus as close. So you could have somebody who's had 20/20 their entire life.
I've had 20/10, and now all of a sudden I'm starting to squint. I'm like,
yeah, you're like looking at things closer. You got to back things away. You see that thing where people
Yeah.
are like looking at something, they got to back it away.
I haven't done that yet, but there's some stuff I'm like, I used to be able to read that from across the room, and now I can't.
It generally, from what I understand, it's more close up. As far as like when you get older, you have a hard time focusing close and not so much as far away.
And low light.
Oh yeah, no, that's the thing too. Like, how many times when you were a kid would your parents walk by and go, "Turn on a light. You can't read that in the dark," and you're like, Yes, I can. I can read this perfectly.
You're going to hurt your eyes.
No, except that you weren't.
Right.
You're just a kid. You can see in the dark. Well, adults can't, and you can't read crap unless I turn on lights now. That's just the way it works. Thank God for iPads and stuff like that to light up.
We just need to eat more carrots.
I don't know that actually is a thing.
It isn't.
I like carrots.
Do you know where that comes from?
It was yes.
British.
It was something about the British were telling enemies that they were eating
propaganda.
more. They were eating more carrots, and so therefore they could see better.
Right, when it was radar.
Right, and it was actually radar and not carrots at all.
But the reason why they were able to detect the German aircraft is they fed all their soldiers extra carrots for the vitamin B so they could see the German planes from farther away.
So then the Germans were like, well, if we just eat more carrots.
Yeah.
Is that how it was? Or
they're like, that didn't work. What is going on? And by that time, they had lost.
Special English carrots, I guess.
Yep.
Was that World War I or World War II?
II.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that seems like those people shouldn't have been tricked so easily in World War II. World War I, sure. But World War II? Well, anyway.
I mean, that stuff was all... I mean, radar is pretty crazy when you think of it.
That's very true.
They didn't really have computers. I mean...
They had the things that they broke the codes with.
Yeah,
I read something about that or saw maybe a movie about it. I don't remember.
Right, the Enigma, and then you've got the Enigma cracking.
Oh, but they had that...
but you saw it. It was like wires and like dials going around.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It wasn't like...
But you can build a...
They weren't playing Oregon Trail.
You can build a computer in Minecraft now.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, so which is weird to build a computer inside of a computer, but there it is. Anyway, so you have more time, you have less social anxiety, but it's hard to see things. Small text, details, and painting. If you're into painting miniatures, that's also very tough too as well. I've been finding that, like we were talking about with the dark, like I have a very hard time reading the text in most of the rule books for Necromunda from Games Workshop, because they put a kind of like a printed texture on the pages to make it kind of look like it's like paper or something kind of grungy, and it's dark, and so you have black text on kind of a dark background. It's really hard to differentiate. You have to have real bright light to see it, especially if you're
digital copies actually sound like they might be a better long term.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like we put a printed like paper texture in the background of Rain and Hell, but I took a lot of time to make sure that it didn't take away from the text, so you can still read it.
Well, and you can make them bigger too.
Well, right. If you're looking at the PDF, because like right now, like the show notes that I'm looking at here, I have them zoomed in a little bit, from Google Docs, so I can see them a little better. But they're also, a little bit farther away. But yeah, that's definitely an issue. Eyesight, but it's not the only issue. Motor controls. As you get older, sometimes you get tremors. Sometimes you just get, like I'm finding that especially I found this last weekend as I was painting quite a bit, I would get done and my wrist would hurt.
Yeah, the arthritis and stuff is starting to, your joints are starting to ache.
I found, and here's a pro tip, it's probably not a good one, but it's a pro tip, I have a tendency to take acetaminophen before I start painting. It's like I'm preemptively trying to help.
Yeah.
It's probably a bad idea.
No,
sure
it's well...
I mean, technically you should be trying to paint in a way that doesn't make it so you hurt. As opposed to just saying, why don't I try to take some drugs that will make me ignore the pain? I don't know.
Well, it depends on if,
Well, ibuprofen can actually become an anti-inflammatory, right? Mm-hmm. We're both totally doctors.
Yes.
But acetaminophen, I think, is just a pain med, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We'll see. I know specifically that we have
time.
some nurses in the audience, so
Yeah, they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, no!
Oh my gosh, you guys are so dumb," which is fine. It's fine. But yeah, motor controls not only for building and painting miniatures, but also the type of games that are like hand-eye coordination games can become a bit difficult too. Like what is that, pitch car? And like those, where you move.
Yeah, dexterity games.
Crokinole. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Yeah.
Click clack lumberjack.
Oh, click clack lumberjack. Yeah. Jenga. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. That's no good if you're all.
Jeez.
That's problematic. I understand that.
Well, so and like, what about like sitting for like if you're like, oh, you're gonna sit for 8 hours and play, like I'd be like, well,
you're gonna need to get up and walk around.
We're gonna have to get up and stretch and stuff like that. Yeah.
No, I mean, I honestly, even in the middle-aged area, when you're playing, if you're gonna be sitting down and playing a long game, let's say, I don't know, Twilight Imperium. Mm-hmm. You need to schedule, get up and move around, go to the bathroom breaks, all that kind of stuff. You definitely, because you're going to if you're having like a really good game and you're really invested in it, you may not notice that you've been sitting for 4 hours.
Right.
And then, you
got to get up.
You get up and you can't barely. So yeah, you do almost need to have like a timer or something that goes off that says, okay, everybody get up and move around. And I think that would be a good idea, something to plan for.
Yeah.
So like, what other kind of responsibilities do you have also? I mean, like you said, like we said earlier, you're retired now. So, hey, you got more time, right?
Yeah, but now maybe you have, like, if you had family, maybe now you have grandkids. So now, and then, like,
a lot of grandparents end up
your kids are getting married,
sometimes.
so then your family's even bigger. So now you started reducing the amount of birthdays, and now suddenly you have more birthdays and births, and the whole wedding cycle started back up again.
Oh, yeah. There was not many weddings last year
Hopefully not as many funerals, but funerals become a thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, certainly, as you get older as well. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And the great thing, like we mentioned at the top of this kind of topic, is the great thing about tabletop games is that you can generally play them throughout the entirety of your life. Mm-hmm. They are something that we both have played since we were young, and we both hope to, I'm sure, play, as we
absolutely
we get older. I'm sure there will be a point at which I will probably have to maybe stop painting miniatures. I hope it's not anytime soon, but I'm sure there will be a point where I'll just be like, I just can't do it anymore. And
maybe it'll be full size at that point.
I'll just start painting full-sized Space
robots
Marines and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Well, heck, by that point, maybe I can get a robot to paint for me. I can just tell it what to do. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, you're just like, I want this color scheme.
Just give it a little bit more dry brushing there on the elbow. That won't get annoying. Well, it's a robot; it won't care. That's fine. Yeah, that's the trick. So yeah, it is. It's something to think about because, as it turns out, none of us is getting younger. I don't think that Benjamin Button thing was a documentary. I'm pretty sure that was a movie. So
Damn you, Brad Pitt.
Yeah, I know. We do have to think about that kind of stuff and try to figure out, like how you want to try to accentuate the pros and mitigate the cons, as you get older and go into gaming to keep having fun doing what you're doing.
Right, and understand where everybody else is coming from. Why?
Yes.
The new kids that are joining your gaming group, what they're, stuff that they have going for them and stuff that they can bring and stuff that maybe you're like, oh, yeah, they're not bringing new games because they are poor.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, that's why you see, to be frank, that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of younger kids playing RPGs, because you don't need a lot of stuff necessarily. Mm-hmm. You've got a book maybe, you've got some pencils and paper, and you got some dice. Mm-hmm. And that's where we started, you and I both, really.
Yep.
And that's cool. But that doesn't mean that only young kids can play Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever. It also doesn't mean that that young kids can't play miniature games. Maybe they've got maybe their mom or dad is also into painting and is like, all right, I got to get you some Reaper Bones or some of that.
I can have my grandkids paint up my Space Marines.
There you go. That's the plan, is to have grandkids, so then you can get them to paint for you. It's like you've got a workforce just built in.
Right. It's my own little sweatshop.
Exactly. Well, I don't know about that. That's not necessarily. I mean, you'd feed them probably pretty well and stuff like that.
I mean, it depends on how well they're doing. I mean,
meritocracy is important.
If they go outside the lines, too much, and they get a little sloppy on my insignias, then
no Twinkies. Yeah. Just regular,
Grandpa
sloppy
don't
Joes.
play like that.
Yeah, exactly. But no Twinkies. All right. Well, before we get ourselves into any more trouble, I want to thank folks again for listening to this episode of the GameFor Podcast. If you've got questions or comments and you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player or just aren't into the whole YouTube comments section thing, then you can feel free to reach out to us via email at podcast@iamgamefor.com. You can also keep up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And check out our website at www.iamgamefor.com. That is www.iamgamefor.com. Thanks.